Hello and welcome to your writing rhythm blueprint, or as I called it before, stop pretending that you can sit down and write every day. We're here to discover what your engine runs on. And a confession, I just got finished running this particular workshop live and I forgot to hit record. So we're going to do it again, but this time with fewer mistakes, and it's going to be better anyway because now I can edit the mistakes out. However, the live portion of the call, I am going to reference here. Just understand that it really did happen in RL, and I want to share it with you because we had some really nice gems from it so that you could actually see how it runs. We're talking about your writing rhythm and finding your blueprint. What we're figuring out today is how to get your engine to run on your chaos instead of someone else's blueprint. So, a little bit about me, for those of you who don't know. I've published 53 books over 24 years, and I've helped hundreds of authors keep the flame alive, with dozens of them hitting the bestsellers list. I help indie fiction authors who are grinding themselves to the ground but refusing to walk away. I help them stop working against their own nature by building a writing business that lasts. Okay, so who here has been told to just sit in a chair and write every day, but feels guilty when they realize that they can't? And they start thinking to themselves, well, if I can't, it must mean that I don't want it badly enough. Well, I just want you to know that that is not true. So here is a little bit about my comeback story and the reason why I am doing this and how I got here. I found publishing success by publishing through the bookmill. The bookmill is that algorithmic math thing that says you have to publish so many books a year to stay visible and to build your success. And I did it. I published anywhere from 5 to 11 books a year. I wrote over 2 million words a year. The way I did it was through routine. I would sit down in front of the computer, produce X amount of words every day, no matter what. And I did succeed. What that did was it overrode my own energy cycle because I'm a heart-weaving myth maker, and neither one of those sits down and works every day. So instead, what it did is it burned me out, and I would burn out in cycles. And every single time I burned out, it would get worse and worse until this last one, which lasted 4 years. Like, look, when I burnt out this last time, I decided that it would be safer for me to go back into construction as a project manager in this body. And at the end, I got yelled at for like 3 days straight, screamed at for something that wasn't even my fault. Should it have been something that I caught? No. But the person who screamed at me for 3 days, he sure thought that it should have been caught. And he was the one who would have been the person to catch that. And he was the one who should have been responsible to catch it. But I realized in that moment that this wasn't a safe place for me, and I really needed to get back to the place where I'm most passionate, and I absolutely love publishing. So I went back into it using the same procedures that got me burnt out before, and it didn't take me very long before I was already feeling the burnout, and I was just like, wait, I cannot sustain this. Something has got to be different. And also, I was looking around and finding a whole bunch of my author friends whom I had been writing and publishing with before. They had all burnt out and they were gone. They were just gone. And when I reached out to some of them, like some of them were trying to come back like me too. And I was just like, you know what? I've got to do something. Like, I have helped build all of these electrical and mechanical and plumbing and other service contractors. I've built up their businesses utilizing structures, business structures based off of their personalities. Why can't I do that for this? And part of me was just like, well, you can't do that for this because creatives are so vastly different. And then I was just like, no, have you ever dealt with a guy who is very chaotic and disorganized and tried to teach him how to file? Like, if I can do that, I can figure out a way to get authors to write sustainably. That got me to thinking about a whole bunch of things and how the personality profiles and how everything wraps around the writing business and how the personality functions in the different aspects of each area of business. Okay, but the first part that I had to consider because I was already burning out is, okay, what is the thing that the bookmill was actually measuring? And it was measuring words, the output. It counted, charted, and worshipped the word count, but it never asked what your battery was. Like how full were you? How depleted were you in your energy cycle? Now, neurospices and ADHD react a little bit differently, and sometimes the work doesn't fuel us. Instead, it can actually deplete us. So sitting down and writing every day actually sometimes does more damage to our ability to build a sustainable author business. But does that mean that you can't be a successful indie author? And the answer is no. So here is what I have found out, and here is what I am putting forth and building around, okay? And understand this is based off of Myers-Briggs. Like, I'm not inventing anything. I gave each house neater names, right? Okay? So actual psychologists did this research, and I just said, okay, how does this work for writing? All right, so we've got the heart weavers, the lore keepers, the myth makers, and the wild scribes. It kind of feels like Harry Potter. So we're going to start by talking about the lore keepers, because these are the ones who can sit down and write every day. These are the people who said this actually works and then actually made it work, because lore keepers are energized by the ritual progress of sitting down in the same place at the same time and getting words out. They draw energy, filling their cup up by meeting deadlines and keeping the routine. When things are going well for a lore keeper, this is the engine. Their production is steady because they break everything into small chunks. And if this is you, you're not boring, okay? This is your superpower. 1,500 words a day, every day, is a 4-book-a-year career. You are the superheroes of the publishing sphere. Their inspiration comes from trusting the system, the market, the story structure, the path to the bestseller. If somebody has already paved the road to success, the lore keeper takes the parts that fit, trusts them, and charges forward. Their fuel is the work itself and the routine around it. Listen to that. Their fuel, the gas that fills up their cup, is the work itself, is the routine around the work itself. The ritual of that routine keeps them focused and pours the energy right back into their cup. But here's the thing to watch, okay? Anything that use the ritual breaks the fuel line. When something disrupts the routine, it creates enormous resistance, and suddenly the steadiest producer in the room can't produce. I'm not saying that lore keepers have it easy, they don't. The question for a stall lore keeper is never, why can't I produce? It's what broke the ritual and how do we get it back? Okay. Now then, their sabotage is literally the thing that keeps them moving. It's the grind, because the work fills their cup so they can push through anything, including a draft that died 5 chapters ago. They'll work right past the failure point. They'll follow a proven path right off of a cliff because it worked before. Grinding through a broken book isn't discipline. It can become loyalty to the wrong system. All right, so next we have the myth maker. That's me. This cycle is binge and sprint, and the binge feeds the sprint. So if a myth maker maintains the balance, they can literally keep themselves in this infinite energy cycle, which makes them look like they are the workhorse. And to be perfectly honest, no one can outgrind a myth maker, especially when they are in high stress. However, sometimes they can really focus on producing the wrong things. They write in explosive sprints, followed by rabbit hole binge sessions. They are the other workhorse of the author houses. Their inspiration comes in 2 ways. The first is the research and the pattern finding in their binge sessions. The 17 tabs are open, the world building, the systems. But the second one matters just as much. It's discovery through writing. So while they're drafting, they stay fueled by discovering how the characters interact with the world and the plot that they're building or have built. And here's something that you only see when you watch a myth maker actually draft. They overbuild some parts of the world and underbuild others. And it doesn't seem to make sense until you actually look at the rough draft. And the underbuilt parts are where they actually write the fastest, because that's where the discovery is happening. Those gaps aren't actually lazy world building or character building. Those gaps are where the myth maker finds their discovery fuel. Okay? So now the sabotage for the myth maker is the planning prison. Are we seeing a pattern here? The thing that makes us special is also the thing that sabotages us? Yeah, no, it's real. The rabbit holes that fill our cup are also sometimes the prison that we find ourselves. And the reason for that is because it feels so good to be in these rabbit holes. It's really exciting. It's a lot of fun. We're having a blast. Like, there's so much dopamine happening as we're building this new language that we're going to use like 3 words from one time. But, we had to invest like 48 hours into creating this language that we're going to use once. So the issue is that sometimes a myth maker in the planning prison looks like they're constantly working. They're just not working on the parts that finish the book. This is the reason why, it's really weird if you get into a sprint match with a myth maker after they have done their binge session. The myth maker is going to win. The myth maker, typically, not always, is going to have more words on the paper because, man, they go so fast. Like they've already made all of these connections and like their fingers are flying. But they really, really struggle with actually getting the book written. The only author house that can underperform in the book production area is the Wild Scribe. We'll get to that later. It's interesting. It's just interesting. I love seeing all of these connections. Okay, so the next one is the Heart Weaver, and they have a fill, pour, and recover. Now we're talking about the two author houses that get the most guilt and the most flack for being who they are, because the fill phase and the recover phase look like procrastination. There's no word count happening in the fill phase, and there's no word count happening in the recover phase. Now, a lot of times the fill phase for a heart weaver are family gatherings, if we actually like our family. And like, I do like my family. I married into a really cool family and I really love it. And like friend gatherings, game night, that's another, great fill activity. Heart weavers, even when we're introverts, we fill through connecting with people. Now, if we're an introvert, we want to connect with our people, not with lots of people. If we're extroverted, then we want to fill with lots of people because they're all our people, right? But the recover cycle looks like being unable to get off the couch, sitting in a dark room, watching TV with the volume turned way down, like low sensory input. Don't talk to me because I can't handle even a conversation. Like everything just kind of shuts down. Now, there's a reason for that, and we will get to it, but it is because heart weavers have a really hard time staying in balance when it comes to their energy, because that fill and pour cycle really could be in balance if they didn't overgive all the time. So the pour or writing sessions are very deep when the tank or the cup is full, but when the tank is empty, then the scenes feel really thin. And when those scenes feel really thin, they're on the cusp of needing a fill cycle. And if they refuse to go into a fill cycle, they're just going to run out of energy and they're going to go into a I can't move off of the couch or a recover cycle. Their inspiration is the emotional heart wound and the transformation. And here's a free craft tool for every heart weaver watching. If you're bored by a scene, check whether it touches the heart line. The movement from wounded to healed, okay? If the scene doesn't touch on the transformation, that's why you're bored. And maybe it doesn't actually belong in the book. The fuel is uncovering the path of healing from the wound. Now, not all heart weavers are actually healers. A lot of us are, but some of us just want to feel it. We want the emotional movement, up cycle or down cycle, without needing it to resolve. A lot of those are the heart weaving wild scribes who are after the experience. Now, understand both are legitimate. You don't have to heal to write it. Your sabotage is the dissolving boundary, okay? Because heart weavers really struggle to create boundaries around themselves because they tend to value themselves the least. Because a lot of the heart weavers that I have talked to, they are the caregivers, the caretakers, of their family units. And so when they carve writing time for themselves, it really feels like they're taking away from the people they love the most, the people whom they're serving. And so there's this guilt, and that guilt is resistance. Anytime you have resistance, now you are not moving forward nearly as fast, and you have to create more energy to overcome that resistance. And when you're not producing quickly enough, and heart weavers they're kind of slow writers because of the way they write, the way they do the connection writing and creating these beautiful scenes that connect on the soul level makes them kind of slower. And that's okay, except for the fact that we are trained to look at our progress through how many words that we have written. And when you do that, now you're in a fail cycle. Fail cycles create more shame, especially when you feel like this is a selfish act because you are stealing time away from everybody else in order to do this. And unless you've got actual toddlers, like, you're fine. You're so fine. If you are struggling, take a look at your boundaries because you probably have some boundary issues. All right, so let's take a look at wild scribes who get the absolute most flack. Because they write and burst and disappear. However, they gain all of their energy in the disappear cycle. And this is the reason why they get so much flack, because their disappear cycle actually looks like goofing off. And so when you have someone like me who gains their energy through work, because I'm a workhorse and my husband is a wild scribe, watching videos beside me as I am like laying down words and doing all of these other things. And I'm like, why are you playing while I'm working? And he's like, but I'm working too. And I was just like, it doesn't look like you are. And so then that output from me made him feel worse. And so then he withdrew more, and writing became even more difficult for him. Like, I have so many things that I'm like working through with him because I did a lot of damage to him when I didn't understand how his cycle even works, right? So the other thing is because I am goal-oriented. He's also goal-oriented, but in a different way. Like, he needs targets, but like physical targets. Like, he needs, I want to get to the end of this scene, or I want to get to the end of this chapter because I'm going to experience this. Like, I'm trying to get to this experience. Not, I'm trying to get to this many word counts. Because whenever we use word counts, now it feels like he's in a cage versus I'm trying to get to this experience, which is very exciting for him. Their inspiration is experience through movement and senses. Wild scribes are deeply sensory people. For all that they seem super flighty, they're probably the most grounded of the 4 houses. They're daredevils, yes, but they're grounded daredevils. And their fuel is found in the disappearing act. It's really frustrating for anybody on the outside, but they are connection thinkers, and they just don't think linearly at all. So when they disappear, they're actually following trains of thought in a way that actually makes sense to them. And so sometimes it's watching a particular video or listening to a particular sound or building something with their hands as they're reading a book that they're trying to emulate. But whatever it is, they're making these connections and they're intuiting how they want the story to go, how they want the next scene to look and feel and be experienced by them. And usually they're doing something with their hands because they're very sensory people. They'll be building engines, building carburetors. My husband's a mechanic, okay? So there's a lot of like car things that happen in this house. But they could also be building bookshelves, sewing a bunch of purses. They could be working in the garden. They are probably not doing laundry. I have yet to meet a wild scribe who disappears to work on their book while doing laundry. Now then, I also have yet to meet a wild scribe who understands, because I've been trying to get this through their heads, that disappearing is still working on their books, even if they're not actively thinking about their books. Because when they are in the writing stage, they're looking and experiencing that scene through their character's eyes, but they're pulling from all of these experiences that they actually gained in the real world. So now, their sabotage is the vanish. Okay, it's the disappearing. Because the reason for this is because their main spine is trust. Wild scribes and lore keepers are all about trust. The lore keepers are trust about the system, but the wild scribe is trust in themselves. And for the wild scribes who come to see me, their trust is fragile. A lot of things will break their self-trust because everyone in the world is telling them that they're wrong. They don't think right, they don't work right, they don't function right, and they're really messy. I mean, not all of them. I'm sure that there's a wild scribe out there somewhere who was not a mess, but all of that external commentary is internalized, and it furthers that lie that they tell themselves and that everyone else tells them, that they cannot be an author because they can't be consistent in the same way that a lore keeper can. Even though the wild scribe and the lore keeper are very, very similar in so many ways, they are complete opposites when it comes to productivity. All right, so now let's talk a little bit more about comparisons. Now, like, there are so many that I could talk about, but for the purpose of this particular workshop, we're going with this. So the lore keepers overwork, the myth makers overthink, the heart weavers overfeel, and the wild scribes disappear. However, if we look at the lore keeper and the myth maker, we can see that they have some similarities because they are both process fueled, and the heart weaver and the wild scribe have similarities in the connection writers. Now, look, there are so many ways that we can compare these in the good and the bad. Like the lore keeper and the heart weaver have multiple things in common. The myth maker and the wild scribes also have multiple things in common. The wild scribe and the lore keeper have something in common, while the heart weaver and the myth maker have something in common. Like, these are just the ones that I pulled out for this particular workshop because we are looking at energy and how we process in publishing. Okay, so now let's talk about the sabotage engine. This is the big elephant in the room because this is the one thing that we are all fantastically amazing at. I wish that we weren't, but we are. All right, so one of the sabotage engines I already talked about, and it's the wild scribes, right? There is a lie that is being told to them that they can't be successful indie authors because they are so flaky, because they're so inconsistent. However, they're some of the best authors that I have ever read. Like, when I sit down to read a wild scribe story, like when I am done with page 1, I don't actually know how it's going to end, and that's pretty rare for me. What is the sabotage engine? We say the lie to ourselves, we find and arrange the proof to support the lie, and then we repeat this. And we do this to keep us stuck in this ball that is comfortable to us. What does this look like for me? Okay, so let me make another confession. My lie is that my ideal reader doesn't actually connect with my writing. I have worked on this one so many times, and I still can't fully tell you where it came from. I tell myself that my readers do not connect with my writing, and that I'm never going to be successful because who actually enjoys what I write? And I will go through the reviews to find the information to support this lie. Look, there is this one reviewer. Her name is Grumpy Granny. I don't know like who she is really, but Grumpy Granny has read every single book I've written in the last 12 years, every one. And she doesn't like most of them. And she keeps on reading. And I use her as my proof while completely ignoring the readers who buy every single book and inhale them. I can literally watch those readers move through my catalog. The evidence of connection is overwhelming, but I always cherry pick Grumpy Granny. So why is it that we actually do this? Because the familiar territory makes us feel safer. It's like me going back to construction instead of staying in publishing. Publishing is kind of scary, right? Even though we enjoy it, like there's so much risk there. There's so much outside of our control. And like we really need the gods to look down upon us and say, I bequeath to you this bevy of good luck. Right? And when we find success, it is usually a lot less luck and a lot more hard work. But some of us put in a lot of work. I'm talking about myth makers. But a lot of the times we are putting a lot of that work into things that actually don't matter, like our websites. Because stepping outside that territory into the space where we might actually succeed is uncomfortable. And we don't know what's out there. Uncomfortable feels bad even when it's good, and comfortable feels good even when it's bad. So as we grow, we are going to be uncomfortable, and that is completely okay. That is what growing costs. Now, here's the thing that I need you to hear and put on repeat. You're not too much. You're too much for some people, and that's a them problem. The fear of existing doesn't mean that the fear is justified. And I know there are some heart weavers out there right now telling me that I'm wrong, because if we feel the fear, surely it's real. Listen. Fear's job is to keep us safe or comfortable. Fear keeps us from jumping off cliffs. Sometimes it also keeps us on the small path just because we can see the whole thing from there. Those are not the same service. Okay, so now what happens if you're a hybrid? Because I happen to know I'm a hybrid. I'm a heart-weaving myth maker. And that does not mean that I have two halves fighting each other. A hybrid isn't a duet. What we actually get is a middle ground, one integrated cycle that neither house runs alone. Okay, so the heart weaver side of me runs on fill, pour, and recover. The myth maker side of me runs on sprint and binge. But when it comes together in one person, this person, okay, it becomes build, write, and recover. Now, most times I can keep the build and the write in equal amounts, and it creates this near infinite loops, constantly building, constantly writing. But here's my failure mode. When I hit a problem I can't solve, I double down into the build phase. Equal parts researching and making something. It could be a website, a spreadsheet, a series Bible, an entire class. Who knows what I'll build? And once I've done that, I'm out of balance. And I fall into the recover. And because I'm the heart weaver and the myth maker, both bills come due. So if you test it as a hybrid, don't be confused. You have a blended cycle with its own name, and knowing which side of you takes over in a crisis tells you exactly what your recovery has to look like. Now, when I ran this live, I got to diagnose 2 authors in real time. The recording of that is living its best life in a void that I don't want to talk about because forgetting to hit record is something that I am still beating myself over right now. But this is what sexy looks like. Okay, so the first one was a lore-keeping wild scribe, and she was supposed to have a book ready for a big conference. She'd known about it for a year. She doubled down and still wasn't able to get it done, and she was in tears. Then the backup plan, the series lead magnet, wasn't going to be done either, and she said the thing so many of you have said, I get going and then something stops it. It's sabotage. Okay? So you would think that because she's a lore keeper that she could have just worked through it. However, she's half lore keeper, half wild scribe, and both run on trust. One of them trusts the system while the other one trusts herself. And she had been so hyper-focused on production that she'd given herself zero space to make the connections that fuel the whole other half of her engine. Worse, the connection she was getting was all outbound. She was the one on the Zoom account. She was leading a critique group. She made sure that everyone else got critiqued while she kept falling behind. She worked a full-time job while most of her group didn't, and she'd just been talked into a second critique group because she wanted to be helpful. So I asked her one question. Do you want to be more helpful, or do you want to create more books? And she said that she wanted to create the books. So the prescription was boundaries around the creation space. Now, understand that we talked about boundaries in the Heartweaver scope. In this particular case, because she was so out of balance, she actually put herself into a traumatic spiral, if you will. And when we do that, we actually start bringing in issues that we find in other houses. I told her to hold the goal, empower the no, and don't accept guilt other people want to hand her, even when they're holding it out with both hands. Now, here's a house-specific nuance. If she were a full lore keeper, I might have said double down, grind it out. You have the temerity for it, but she's 50-50 lore keeper and wild scribe. And for that blend, stress works against her. Like, it works against both engines. So stress is a fuel for a myth maker. Give me more up to a point, okay? But for her, it's sand in the gears. It's a stall for her, and so we needed to get that stress out of her engine. Here is another thing that came out. She has a 7-book series that she's been writing for over 10 years. She never published it because the books never felt ready. Then, while she was writing the last one, she switched it from third person to first person, and it made all the difference. Like, everything just connected. And now she's rewriting the series. But everyone around her keeps calling this a decade of failure, when it absolutely wasn't. Part of her knew that these stories needed something that she couldn't perceive yet. And she trusted herself and honored that part of herself and kept making the connections until she found it. She was right the whole time. And so now the assignment is to trust herself again, set the date, publish the books, and stay out of the perfection loop the lore keepers and the wild scribe portion of herself, both run on trust. And so both of them want this to be right before it goes out. Otherwise, she's going to stop trusting in herself. Now, the second one was a heart-weaving wild scribe with a Patreon. His words, I can't write until I know what I'm going to write, and I hate how that sounds because it sounds like waiting for the muse. The thing that I told him is that this isn't a muse, that both halves of him are connection writers. And so how do you write a story you're not connected to? How do you write something that you can't feel or experience yet? The heart weaver side fills the cup through people, family things, real conversations, game night. But the wild scribe energizes by exploring something tangible, something you can touch. Sometimes for the heart weaving wild scribe, it's exploring through conversations. So I can't start until I know where it's going isn't a muse problem. It's a connection that hasn't finished forming, and the fix isn't discipline. The fix is permission to go seek. And here's the part that got me. He felt this crushing obligation to produce on a weekly schedule for his patrons. And when I asked who demanded that, nobody had. Not one patron ever said, produce weekly or I'm going to cancel. He installed that schedule on himself because, of course, clearly I have to. That's that sabotage engine again. That's that lie that was self-installed. I mean, it may not have been self-installed. It might have been other people telling him, hey, you have to produce regularly if you have patrons. Okay, so here's what I told him. And it goes for every one of you with an audience. The people who follow you are connecting with the stories that only you can tell. If you're honest with them, hey, here's my production. I'm learning my own rhythm so I can be consistent in my own way. Please be patient with me. They will. Because you're connecting to their soul in a way that nobody else is. And maintaining a constant schedule that fights your cycle, that's a terrible idea. Burn it. Okay, so I'm giving you a free tool. The link is below this video. This is the stamina tracker. It's an HTML document, which means everything you put in it is only visible to you, and it actually lives on your device. So pick the device that you're going to use regularly and use that. Open it up in your browser. It will not even be shared between your devices, so bookmark it where you write. What this does is it shows you your gauges. How full is your energy tank? How inspired are you? How excited about the book or just committed to it? And are you hitting the consistency that you choose? Because not all of us can write every day, but if you said you wanted to work on your book 3 times this week, and there were so many things that count as working on your book besides drafting, did you actually hit that? Okay, so let's just bring it over so that you can see what it looks like. All right, and let's make this bigger so that you can actually see. All right, so this is the stamina tracker. You just pick the day, but how did you feel? Here are like your energy gauges. Today I was really freaking tired, or I felt pretty decent, or dude, I was so super stoked. I could barely contain myself, right? And today I was a 7. Okay, and my inspiration, excited about the book, or just committed, I'm gonna say I am at a 4, mostly because I didn't even think about my book today. I was thinking about everybody else's. Okay, and then the things that I did today was mostly work, and EO is energy out. How much energy did you invest into this task? And so 1 to 2 is minimal, 3 to 5 is manageable, 6 to 8 is draining, 9 to 10 burns you out. Okay. And work was, you know what? I had fun. And it didn't take hardly anything out of me. So I'm going to say it was manageable. And then energy return, 1 to 2 is fatigued, 3 to 5 is neutral, 6 to 8 is positive, and 9 to 10 is motivated and lit up. And I'm going to say that I was a 9. Okay. And I haven't actually completed the rest of my day. I'm going to be spending some time with family and friends. I am guessing that the output is going to be 3 and I'm going to have an 8 because it's game night today. Game night. And I really enjoy game night. And then you just hit save and hit OK. And you will come over here. And when you have information, it's going to show right here what your gauges are. Your energy is a 7, your inspiration is at a 4, and your consistency is 1 out of 7. All right. So that's just something to help you see physically where you are. Make sure that you bookmark that because it is very helpful. All right, so that is the end. I want to burn the book mill, and I want to build an author engine that runs on your chaos. And if any of this resonated, I want you to book a free Unstuck author call with me at Real Indie Author and click Unstuck Author Call. It'll take you to the Calendly where you just pick the time, and I will send you a Zoom invite, and then we will sit down, talk about your book, where you are, and I will try to give you something that will actually help you move forward, building a sustainable author career based on how you work. All right. Thank you so much. I deeply appreciate your time. Write amazingly.